Hey, what is up everybody? This is Blackblade, and fictional lore is an interesting thing. Oftentimes I find myself impressed by the amount of effort and painstaking detail writers go into to make their world's mythos feel lifelike. And so long as it's not the center focus, it can greatly enhance the story overall. Now why do I mention this? Well, it's pretty much impossible to open any other way when talking about Bionicle. However, that's not the history I have with the series. I didn't grow up with any of the comics or novels, and even the figures I had little connection with, being more influenced in my youth by the Knights Kingdom figures, if anyone remembers those. What I had far more experience with though were the movies, as you see in the background, and even more so the games. The first one, based off the first movie, I didn't like much, and tossed out faster than the first slice of bread. And the second we're here to talk about today. And I have a lot to say about it, so let's get started. Bionicle Heroes is a third-person shooter collectathon, released in November 2006, making it the third of Traveler's Tales Ventures and LEGO games, and the second that season. It was a game released during the transition from console generations, making it the 9th to last game to be officially released on the GameCube. And for better or worse, that's the system I grew up with it on. Now, of all the games that played a part of my childhood, this was one of the most prominent that I actually own, giving it a lot of nostalgic connection to me. But screw nostalgia, we here look at games based on their technical merit, and it's about time we did the same with this game, old as it may be. So let's go say Voya Nui one last time. This is Bionicle Heroes, the review. Examining games at the end of a console's library is interesting. On one hand, they should be the most technically impressive games on the system, but more often than not, they tend to be poorly optimized one way or the other. Looking at online footage, it's undebatable that the 360 version looks better, but I don't think the GameCube version is inherently bad either. Things are scaled down, but to an understandable degree, and the game retains the pretty environments. It's similar to LEGO Star Wars 2 in that respect, but one area this game does better than Lisp is blend it well with the LEGO elements. The characters, enemies, and constructions all stand out from their surroundings, but not in a way that they feel like toys placed on a random desktop wallpaper. Another noteworthy thing is the projectiles in this game. Every character you have access to, and even the ones you unlock later for completion, have distinct projectiles visually, most of which looking really cool. Now there is one issue that comes from all of this, and looking at the footage, you've probably seen it too. This game can get cluttered at times with way too much on the screen drawing your gaze. There's more to say on that, but for the moment I'm just going to give the graphics an 8 out of 10 and move on. Traveler's Tales certainly knows their area of expertise with gameplay, which is probably why every LEGO game from them feels so dang similar. As this is one of their earlier projects, I'm not going to get on its case for that though. And hey, it at least varies in being a different genre. While at its core this still retains the collectathon adventure feel of its kindred, I'm going all out with the thesaurus today, aren't I? It varies in containing elements of a shooter. As such, the areas of focus for level design, character mechanics, and enemy AI differ slightly. Let's start with the level design. Levels feel less like individual locations to transition between and more actually sprawled out. Not open, just interconnected. This lays the groundwork for pretty good combat sequences, made even better by the characters. Basically, each one fills a distinct weapon role for a shooter, with Jaller as the SMG, Holly as the machine gun, Kongu as the shotgun, Yuki as the rocket launcher, Motoro as the sniper rifle, and Nuparu as the grenade launcher. Beyond that, they all have their own ways of interacting with the levels, spicing things up a bit in the design department. However, it's very clear some are used more often than others. There are very few points you have to cross through lava with Jaller, while alternatively, Yuki is the equivalent of if, in other LEGO games, all constructions were relegated to one character. Regardless, they're still fun to use. But how about the enemies you fight? Well, most of your confrontations boil down to 3 enemy types, all with interesting roles. The Viscerak are great in number, overwhelming you and being able to catch you completely off guard by dropping from the ceiling. Bohrok are frequent as well, but not to the same extent, and whether through the air or rolling into you in a protected bubble, they can apply a good amount of pressure on Moss. Then lastly, we have the Vaki, of which you rarely fight more than 3 at once, but they can hold a position and slow your advances down considerably. While it may not be the most complex thing, the roles these buggers fill provide an acceptable amount of variation and thinking to take down. So, you've got good level design, fun characters, and interesting enemies. Controls are decent, got some cool boss battles. Honestly, I don't see anything wrong here. This is Hero Mode, a mechanic that, while good in theory, single-handedly ruins almost everything. So every LEGO game has a bar that fills up as you collect studs throughout the level. When you consider that, this sounds like a pretty cool idea, to turn that into a power-up meter, providing you with a damage boost and invincibility. It could work similar to the power-ups in the complete saga. However, it fails in several ways because of its execution. This is the thing I said I'd get to later with the graphics, and let me mention the problem there first as it's brief. While this mode is active, a gold aura surrounds your character, drawing the center of your focus to a corner of the screen with no significance, causing the rest of the visuals to just blend together in the back of your head. In terms of gameplay though, this causes a whole slew of problems, mainly revolving around the fact that it doesn't naturally go away. As a result, the minuscule amount of challenge this game had already is completely dismissed by being unable to take damage for extremely long periods of time. How does it go away though? Well, whenever you interact with a set of gold pieces on the ground and build something to help progress through the stage, it takes away hero mode. However, it requires being in hero mode to get past these obstacles in the first place. This power-up is mandatory to acquire at least 3 times a level on average to proceed. This makes the core gameplay loop extremely dull and sucks out any semblance of fun you could have here. It bothers me so much, wondering how these levels would be if this wasn't the case, but it is. And so the gameplay has to settle with a 5 out of 10. Anyway, apologies for rambling. Let's balance it out by discussing something way better. The sounds used in this game are very unique for the most part. I mean, there are the ambient sounds like rain and howling winds, though that all is good, but everything else has a distinctly Bionicle feel to it. Kongu's weapon is the best example of this, as while a laser shotgun is already an interesting sound to piece together in your mind, it has a sharpness to it that's just... oh, it's so good. The enemy noises are also distinct, though in repetition, they can get pretty annoying.
Please go away, stop, no, please, shut up, shut up, shut up!
One thing that doesn't get old though is the soundtrack. And holy crap, this is one of the best soundtracks I've ever listened to. There's so much variety to the sounds, always doing a good job to capture the feel of the area or situation. I like to showcase some tracks that stood out to me, but there are too many to play, so I'll just do a speed listing of the ones that I like. Rocksheep Battle, Titan Battle, Avax Dynamo, Ancient Citadel, Ridex Bastion, Logging Post, Fiery Mine, V-Zonk's Awakening, and credits, which also plays in Baraka Playground. When I said this was one of my favorite soundtracks, I meant it. There is so much to love here that I would give it a 10 alone. But guess what? Hero mode strikes again, and in quite possibly the most annoying way yet. You see, it has its own theme, and honestly it's not a bad one. Very adventurous and empowering, I considered mentioning it with the previous tracks. However, whether the track is good or not doesn't matter when you'll be hearing it 40 to 60% of the total game length. Because of how frequently you're in hero mode, it constantly takes you out of hearing the themes you'd rather listen to, reaching a point where it becomes more grating than... So we'll just have to settle in this regard for an 8 out of 10. So, content. Typically the best thing LEGO games offer. Well, not so much this time. Let's start out positive before I collapse into an inferno of pent-up frustration. This game has some solid replay value in how much freedom you have to go about the game. At all times after the first level, you have at least 3 other zones to go to. So if you're tired of one section and don't need to progress sequentially to make sifting through footage simpler, there's a solution. Also, speaking of progress, this game's got a good sense of that. Much of completing this game involves using the different character abilities to reach silver and gold canisters, earning you more enemy creatures in the hub area pens, and adding to a giant wall of masks, all containing information I didn't bother to read through because of the sheer volume. However, you don't have everything available right away. Each character has an additional ability to reach other areas you only get by upgrading them. And then there's the Paraka that you can play as after beating their stages, and V-Zon who replaces them after you beat the game. This makes it that every stage has at least 1 canister to go back and collect. Assuming you want to go back and play them, that is. This game overstays its welcome considerably. Having to play through every level at least twice, or 3 times for me, meant what got boring after 5 hours ended up in total being over 17. And guess, just guess what the main culprit of this is.
Hero mode?
You don't say! Because of how integral this mechanic is, levels that should have good replay value become an absolute slog to play through with unskippable cutscenes and having to enter the same character state again and again and again and again and again. Come on, is there anything that can redeem this game here? Paraka Playground is funny. 3 out of 10. Typically, I leave this aspect ungraded for LEGO games as they're based off existing properties, but this is their own franchise with a relatively loyal fan base that has grown fond of the surprising depth this universe has. So how does Bionicle Heroes size up? Isn't good. I may not be a Bionicle aficionado, but that doesn't mean I don't know wasted potential when I see it. They had the opportunity to tell something at least partially interesting here, but completely wasted the opportunity on nothing but slapstick. Maybe I can blame Hero Mode for this somehow. I got it! It makes all the characters overpowered and ruins any dramatic tension otherwise established. Wait, what do you mean that's a stretch? Okay, so if it's just silly, goofy, funny bad guy fall, then does it do that well at least? I'd say it's alright. Some scenes genuinely get a laugh out of me still, while others have weak punchlines. I think because it seems this was the entire focus, it feels a lot of the time like they tried too hard, which I know is subjective and potentially hypocritical for me to say, but whatever. I don't really have anything else to say here, so 4 out of 10, let's conclude. Bionicle Heroes is a game I like a lot, both for nostalgia and genuinely enjoyable moments. But that's not enough to make me blind to its problems. Despite the visuals, progression, and phenomenal soundtrack, there are several factors holding this game down, most of which being attributed to a single badly executed mechanic. To summarize, I give this game a 5.6 out of 10. It's a good introduction for kids to the world of third-person shooters, and beyond that, it's worth a try if you're a fan of Traveler's Tales' other endeavors. But I believe this game will have to be one that I personally enjoy, yet don't expect anyone else to share. At the very least, I highly recommend you search up the soundtrack on YouTube and give it a listen, which you have a chance to do so now that the video is almost done. Hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to slice that like button in half, subscribe to my channel if you are new, and let me know in the comments whatever your thoughts are on this game. I'll respond as soon as I can. But once again, hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.
Yo, Paraka. The gang on the loose,